Hey guys, it's Tina here from Heirloom Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make the first wise men from my Nativity Scene Series. The first thing I want to do is take you through my list of materials. So number one is when you download the pattern, you're going to need to print it onto some sulky sheets. So this is Fabri-Solvi. I'll put a link to it in the comments below, or in the description rather. And you're going to be printing at 100% or full scale, whatever your printer options are. And you can double check that you're printed to the correct scale by checking it against this little measure, the scale bar that's down here. The second sheet, you can just print it off on regular paper. For felt, so your felt, you need to pre-shrink it. And what I mean by that, I stick it in some water, kind of lukewarm. I'll put it into the water, get it really soaky, and then I'll take it up and I'll fold it to squish, to squish out all the excess water and really get it out. And sometimes I'll just do this final little squish like that. And then I'll take it and I'll stick it on a drying rack. And then you'll see it will shrink down. And if you don't do this before you embroider, you're going to end up with much smaller pieces afterwards. And if you're working with a mix of embroidered and not embroidered pieces, so some felt that has been soaked and some that hasn't, you'll find that your pieces don't match together. And I have done that, so I've learned the hard way. Anyway, so you definitely want to take all your felt. If you buy the kit, it is not pre-shrunk for you, so you do have to go through this step. So try to think about it the day before you actually want to start on this project. 2 pipe cleaners I've got on the materials list. So there's different brands out there. You basically just want to look for something that's got a low pile that is actually meant for cleaning out pipes, and then I think you're good to go. Seed beads. So I've got mine already here to go. It's a yellow and a red that I'm using, and you can obviously do whatever colors you want. And these are Miyuki glass seed beads. I also retail them in my shop. The beads. So when you buy the kit, the face already comes done for you. Not the beard. The beard you'll still have to do yourself, but I've already drawn on the facial features. But in this video, I am going to show you how I draw them on, any hints and tricks I have to get a nice looking face and how to draw it on. And going alongside of that, if you are going to be making your own face, you're going to need a black marker. These jelly roll markers made in Japan, and this is a size 8. And then I've also got a 12mm bead and 2 8mm beads. These are going to be for his hands, and this is going to get wrapped around with floss, and that is used for his little pottery container. Interfacing, I just cut a little piece here. A heavyweight craft interfacing will be fine. And then I've got gray wool yarn. So this stuff has been awesome to work with, but I don't even know if I can get it anymore. So I'm going to show you this one. I just like the color. This is more of a conventional yarn. So I'm actually going to build this particular figure using this one. Rice is what I use to weigh the bottoms of the figure. So you don't have to use rice. I've had a couple of people ask me. They're from more humid environments. So an alternative, I was thinking filler that you use for it's like glass beads that you use in flower pots and stuff. I've seen them in the floral section at Michael's, and I think also at the dollar store. I kind of want to say a fine stone would also work. And if you've got any recommendations on anything else you've tried, throw it in the comments below. I'm sure somebody would like to hear. Then I also list polyfill. Now my preference is always wool stuffing, and that's what I use. I also list a stuffing fork, and I will have to grab one later on, but a purple thing works really well. Chopstick, that can work. I've got an old knitting needle that can sometimes work. Depending on what you're stuffing, you can use hemostats, and I've got a whole video on that. Gonna need a hot glue gun, wire cutters, and just a basic hand sewing supplies. So I am going to start by cutting out my pattern pieces. I'm leaving a generous edge around all of them. You're not going to be cutting along the final line until after you embroider these pieces. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got all of my pieces cut out roughly around the edges, and I actually have them separated by color. So what I am going to start with is actually this piece that's for the interfacing. I'm just going to go ahead and stick that on. So that is out of the way. And so with the sulky, you just peel off the printed off piece. It's sticky on the back side and you just put it on top. And then I've got a nice line afterwards that I can cut this out when I'm ready. Okay, so I've got those two pieces ready to go. Bottle cork, you'll notice there is no embroidery on that. So I'm just going to put it aside because I'll just be cutting out along the final line when I'm ready to do that. This one's got 3 little beads I've got to attach, so I'll just put that there. I think I'll put it, yep, it fits this way. All right, so I'm going to make sure I've got all the pieces that do not have any embroidery on them. I'm just going to put them aside for now and focus on the ones that do have embroidery on them. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one. I'll show you how to work with the metallic flosses after. So with the scarf, so for these ornaments, I use 2 strands of floss, and for the gold, I've got the Light Effects 3852, and again, I just use 1 strand here, so it's 1 strand of this, 2 strands of the DMC regular flosses. If you want to use Diamond, that's great. It's already a single piece of floss, so you can use it. All right, so I will actually start up here, and the reason is that I do have this thread tail, and if I start down here, you never know. There's a chance afterwards it's going to stick out and someone will be able to see it. So if I have an opportunity, I always try to start my tail more inboard of everything. So this is just called a back stitch, what I'm doing. And you're basically just going through. See why the sulky makes this so much easier. Just going through each of these small lines with your thread. Just finish this up off video, so you don't have to sit through and watch me stitch everything. So I'm just gonna, so that gives you an idea of the red. And then, okay, I've got a fine needle here because you need to be able to get through the hole in those very small beads. Oops, things are sticking to me. I'm going to go ahead and put 2 strands. Again, I just do that for durability when I'm putting beads on. You can also use normal sewing thread. There is no problem with that whatsoever. I do that sometimes. So then after I finish doing all of this and all of this with the red, I'll come back through and I'm going to go, I hope you can see this, I'm going through on one edge of the circle and I'm going to come back out on the other edge of the circle. So I'm going to grab a bead, thread that on, and then come out there. And the bead sits nicely on there. So I'm just going to go into the next one again on the edge. And at this point, sometimes that's when I'll put the bead on. Still keep my needle in there, through, and then put it on the other side of the circle. Okay, and I will go all the way down again on this one, off camera. And the next piece I'm going to show you is just the crown is very easy. Here is putting 3 red beads, one by one. So I'm going to start in here and pick up a red bead. So this piece is ready. The last thing is to cut it out around the edge, but I'm going to do all of those at the same time at the end. So I'm just putting it aside for now. And I'm going to move on into the arms. I'm just looking at my figures. So I do this right. This is, oh gosh, yeah, 930, DMC 930. I'm going to start by doing this cross feature down here and then a back stitch line, and that is all done using this color. So I'm going to, literally start wherever you want. And for this, I'm just going all the way up and then making my cross across. Because they're such small stitches that you don't need to do 4 stitches. You can just do 2 like how I'm doing it. And you can see how having this sulky, I mean, this makes this just so enjoyable. So I'm going to do a back stitch up here, which is technically you're going forward a bit and creating a stitch. Then you're going to jump ahead that same distance, come through, and then go back on yourself. That's why it's called a back stitch. And I'm going to go back into the end where I ended off and keep doing that kind of pattern as I move along. And then on this one, I'm going to show you how to work with the gold floss. It can be annoying. Like, it really probably is. Some people avoid it like the plague because of the metallic kind of nature of the floss. It's really challenging to work with. It is prone to tangles. Sometimes it rips on you, and the best piece of advice I can give is work with shorter lengths than say you would normally, and work with a larger needle head than you would necessarily think that you need. I'm using a single strand, and I am still going to use a size 5 embroidery needle on it because I find it almost makes like a bigger hole for the floss to come through, and I don't end up with as many tangles. Diamond is definitely a level up in quality and easier to work with. It's got its own problems too, though. It's also not perfect, but it is easier. So I'm just going to go through. Also, you can also slow it down a little bit. Sometimes that helps prevent the tangles. So here I'm kind of doing a bit of a back stitch. I'm just kind of following this vine pattern along and going slowly. And if I find here, I'll do this on the next one when I come out here. If I find that my thread is like tangling and looping around itself a lot and twisting, a nice way to deal with that is I take my needle, I pull it all the way down to the base, and then I just let the twists and stuff kind of untwist themselves. If you hang this upside down, your needle's going to fall off, so that's why I don't do it that way. So I'm just going to keep working on this vine thing. Okay, so I'm going to stop there on this piece. The only other thing that I have to do is at each of those circles, I'm going to be putting a red bead, as you can see in the sample. So I will be doing that again off camera. The tunic, I don't know if I need to show you this one necessarily. Again, it is a cross, and I'm just doing exactly the same cross pattern as I did here, where it's just a single stitch across each direction. And then if I flip over, this is probably the most complicated, and that's why I left it for the end to explain to you. So here you got the little X's and the yellow beads that you've already done. So over here you've got X's and yellow beads, you've got red beads, and then you've got this vine again that is all done with metallic floss and kind of back stitching. And again, down here, beads, metallic floss, cross pattern, and beads. Okay, so that is what I'm going to finish up, and then I will come back to you and I'll show you each of the pieces finished, how I cut along the lines, and we'll soak the pieces together. Hey guys, I'm back again. So miraculously, I finished all of this embroidery so fast. I'm just kidding, it took me a little while. Yeah, so I've got all my pieces done, and so now I'm going to go ahead and cut around the outside line using my scissors that are meant for fabric or felt. And then off to the side, I do have some water waiting, just in a big old plastic container. And that's where I'm going to put these pieces after I finish cutting, to soak off and dissolve the sulky layers, that all that we're left with is the stitching. Now, one thing I do like to do, and I'll show you on this one, If you've got a piece where the majority of it does not have any stitching on it, and much like this one, and I just have stitching along here, I'm going to just go ahead and pull off the sulky that's above here, just so that you don't end up with extra goo kind of flying around in the bath. So I'm just going to do that. And for these pieces, it's really just the tunic pieces that are like that. And remember, these other ones that don't have any stitching on them, we're literally just cutting around the outline, okay? Okay, so I've now cut out all of the pieces that have embroidery and beadwork on them, and they're ready for soaking. So here I've got a container with the lukewarm, good sized bath that I like to do. And you're just gonna stick these in. If I was working with really light colors along with really dark colors, I would do all the light colors together first. If you've got whites and things, do them, let them soak, do their thing, take off the sulky, let them dry, and then move in with your darker colors, because in a bath you do run the risk of, if you've got like a burgundy that's prone to bleeding, it will discolor the water, which will then possibly discolor your final product. So these, I'm just gonna let them hang out here for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, I have cut out these remaining pieces just around the outer edge, and I'm going to put them aside. And I'm going to take just a kitchen towel and put it off to the side, and I'm going to make sure that you can see everything. And so now, one by one, I'm just going to grab up my pieces. They'll sometimes have some sulky goo still on them, and I'll just kind of take that off and rub around where the beads are. You'll find with the beads and the sequins that the sulky kind of sticks around them. And once I get that all cleaned up, I'm just going to press the excess water out and then lay it flat. And I'm just going to keep doing that for all of my pieces. You can see why I got rid of the sulky up here, because otherwise I'd have extra goo to deal with, and there's really no points. If you find that you do have some stubborn areas that you're having trouble getting the sulky off of by doing it in this way, you can also go to a running tap of water and actually clean these up directly under a running faucet. And I find sometimes that is helpful too. Then you don't have to deal with the floating goo in the water bath. You also will find that these pieces, once they're dry, they're going to be stiffer than they were before. They'll almost feel a little bit more like stiff interfacing, which is totally fine. I mean, hey, it adds structure to the pieces. And with these pieces, you want to be rubbing, but you don't want to be tugging at them, because you would risk on a piece like this deforming it and having it lengthen by accident on you. Okay, and then when I've got them drying on that towel, I also make sure that I don't have pieces overlapping other pieces. Yeah, so I just have them, you can put them on you can put them on a bath towel. I just have them on a kitchen towel. Make sure they're laid out, that they're nice and flat, that nothing's touching anything else. And that's it. So now, pretty much, you just need to let it dry. Drying times vary, depends on how dry an environment that you have, but overnight's always safe. Sometimes if I do this first thing in the morning, by noon or mid-afternoon, they're dry and ready to work with. So it all depends. But you'll know once they're dried, then we'll move on to the next job. Hey guys, so I am back now. All of my pieces have dried, and you'll notice they are just a little stiff, and that's okay. It's just when you work with the sulky, it doesn't quite come out of the felt, and that's fine, but I'm so excited to move forward with this pattern. So I've got instructions beside me, so I'm just going to follow along with them. So the first step is you're going to start with the body, and you'll notice on the body pattern there are these 2 dashed lines. That indicates where you're going to be sewing. So I'm just going to put that aside. And this one gives you a small diagram of how I'm going to be boxing in the bottom to create this square bottom so that he sits nicely. So right now I'm just going to take these 2 pieces, sandwich them together, and then I'm going to grab my corresponding embroidery floss, and I'm going to be using 2 strands, and I'm going to do a whip stitch. You want to be super precise. You can take this piece, see where it is, you can make a little mark with a disappearing pen or something. I'm going to be starting on this side because it's easier for me because I am left-handed, and I'm just going to approximately go here. And then I'll just be doing a whip stitch all around the edge up until about the same spot on the other side. The pattern allows for a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So basically this distance, you want to try to keep around 2/8 of an inch. And this is a part that's hidden, so it's a good place to practice your whip stitching. So you can see that I've come up to about the same point as on this side, so now I'm just going to tie off. Okay, the next thing that you're going to do is take your body and open it up, and you want to kind of flatten this bottom bit as such. And you'll see that you'll end up forming kind of 2 triangle ends at either side, and try to keep that seam somewhat in the middle. Okay, and then basically these are approximations, but I measure about 7/8 coming in. Should be about there, and that should give you about an inch and a bit across. And this is where I'm just going to do a running stitch back and forth across this, and this is to create that box. So I'm literally going to go just in and out, across, and I'm going to go back and forth several times just to strengthen that. Okay, and you're just going to repeat that on this side. Okay, so you've got this sort of a thing happening. Next step is you're going to flip it right side out. Be gentle with it. Don't want to pull your stitches by accident, so kind of like maybe start with one side and feed it through that opening. Okay, if you do this and then you realize, oh, you didn't really do a good enough job with these seams, you can always just go back in here from this side and stitch it. It's all fine. Okay, so I've got my little standing box made. So now I'm gonna use my rice, and I'm gonna fill that bottom with rice. So I've got my funnel and rice, and if it gets stuck, grab like a pen or something to stick through the funnel. That's about all that I think I can fit in here. I like to give it a final push just to make sure it's really in there firm, because you can see I've just created a bit more space there. I think at this point I can probably just go in with my fingers and just fill it up a bit more. And you can already see this is really giving it the ability to stand up on its own, which was awesome. And the next step is to take your pipe cleaner, and I'm going to measure the length. It's specified in the pattern, 2 inches, and you're going to take your glue gun, and that'll sit along here, and that's going to be my back. So I'm just going to add a bit of glue up there. This right in there. So the next job is you're going to now continue that whip stitch all the way around, and as you go, you're going to go ahead and stuff this. I have wool stuffing. You can use any kind of stuffing, what your preference is, and I like wool. It's got a better weight to it than polyfill, and it's also better for the environment, so I'm going to do that. Okay, so you'll see I've taken it to about there. I've got about 1.5 inches of an opening, and I am actually going to use, you can just stick this in with your finger if you want the stuffing. I'm going to use some hemostats. I think they'll work great for this, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of stuffing and start up in this area, and try to not spill that rice out of the bottom. You do want to stuff it fairly firm. Okay, and then at this point I'm going to switch just to my fingers to really get that last bit in there, and I'm going to continue with my whip stitching. All right, so I've got this done, and this is where my pipe cleaner is. I'm going to flip that around, so this will be my front. The next step is to work with your arms. So I'm going to peel the sulky off of the arm backs, and I've got my pipe cleaners already cut and ready to go. And one thing that you want to make sure that you do is you want to take these arms and make sure that they're mirror images of each other, so you don't end up with 2 left or 2 rights, which can be really annoying. Yeah, so basically you're just going to stick the pipe cleaner so that it's got about just a little bit sticking out. That's where your bead is going to go on, so you don't want it to be longer than the bead, whatever is extending. So I'll just extend it just a little bit like that, and I'll bend it here, okay? And then I'm going to glue that pipe cleaner in place, and I'm going to do the exact same to the other side. Okay, and then the next step is to take your arm fronts, and again you're going to want to line them up, and then these you're going to do a whip stitch with the matching color all the way around. So I'm going to start at this end all the way around and here, and then I'm going to start stuffing. For you, if you're right-handed, you will likely want to start on the other side because you'll be holding it in opposite hands than I am. And to hide the tail, the little knot, you're going to want to come in between, come in and make your stitch so that that knot is hidden in behind, and then start your stitching. Okay, so you'll see I've stitched all the way around. I've stopped at his elbow, and now I'm going to stuff just as much stuffing as I can. You don't have to go crazy, but into that opening. All right, and then now I'm just going to continue on and finish sewing along here, and I'll add a bit more stuffing. So now I'm going to open up from the bottom, try to get just a little bit more stuffing in there to give it a bit of shape, and then you're going to take one of your beads and put that on. Now if you notice that it's extending a little bit too much, just cut that little bit off and that'll work. Put a little drop of glue on there. Now traditionally I don't bother closing this up. I like it staying open, and that stuffing should not come out on you. But if you would like to throw a few stitches or even just glue it right there against the other side of the bead, you can feel free to do that. I'm just going to work on the other one. Okay, so I've got my 2 arms ready to go. And the next step is to take the arms. And you're going to glue them on either side of the shoulder. Just add a drop of glue at the shoulder there. Get on. Again, you're going to want to make sure that your pipe cleaner in the body, this is the back. So you're going to have your arms facing forward, and do the same on this side. Okay, and hold them there just for moments so that the glue can dry. You're going to take your 2 tunic pieces. There's a front and a back, but they're basically mirror images of each other, so you can just flip them over. I'm going to take my corresponding thread color, and I'm going to sew a whip stitch along each of these edges. Basically, you're creating the shoulder seam of the tunic. Okay, so you can see I've got my 2 shoulder seams done. I don't care about those knots because they're going to be covered up anyways. Now you're going to take this, and that's his neck, and you're going to slip this over the neck through that opening, and you're gonna bring his tunic around. You can see how that fits around him. And now you're going to start on one side. I'm going to start here. I'm going to start up under his armpit and do a whip stitch all the way along, and then I'm going to repeat it on the other side. You may have to move the arm up a little bit to get it out of the way. So I'm going to start right at this corner and get my knot hidden, even though I don't think you'll actually see it. And I'm just lining it up, whoops, like this. And getting underneath. You can see that. Yeah, I might have been working out of the view. So there. Okay, and you'll see it does get easier as you make your way down. Okay, and you're going to want to constantly also be checking that you're still lined up at the bottom, because these pieces can shift, and you can, they have a bit of stretch to them, so you can stretch them and manipulate them a little bit so that they really do fit nicely together. Okay, so I've got the one side done, and now I'm going to line that seam up with the seam that's underneath on the body, and really pull it tight. And it is going to be tight over your body, and that is how it's supposed to be, so don't worry about that. This will pull together, don't worry. So we're gonna start in behind here and line yourself up as nicely as you can at that bottom, and we're gonna pull that tight. Okay, a lot of that depends on how careful you were to stay with your 1/8 and how much stuffing. I really stuffed this base, so hopefully this is your worst case scenario. But again, if you hold it together, there is some stretch within the felt itself, so it will stretch and conform to what you need. Just make sure that you do pull your stitch wide enough that it's not going to tear through. You want to have a good amount of felt between your needle hole and the actual edge of the fabric, but you can see it's starting to come together. Okay, and again, I'm going to tip that arm out of the way, and I'm going to keep sewing all the way up. All right, so that's him so far. The next step is the overskirt. So this is the back side. I'm just going to make sure I don't have any stray threads that are coming over the edge, which I do have a couple, so I'm just going to cut them back a bit. I don't want them visible afterwards. I do make a note on the pattern if you want to reference it, just to give you an idea of how it's going to sit on the figure, but looking at the images on the PDF might be enough. So basically, I'm going to be starting at the back, and I'm just folding this in half so I know where my center is, and I'm going to be centering that on the figure. And this goes about, I'm going to say, like, you're basically lining up the bottom with the bottom of the body, and when you wrap these around, they should just come together like that in the middle. So you've got a small bit of an overlap. So what you're going to do is come back, and I'm going to add a bit of glue in there because I'm quite happy with how that is. And you can, I mean, this is on so tight it's not going to move on you, but if you want to, you can come back and throw a little bit in there. Make sure it doesn't move on you, and even in this side if you wanted. We're going to move on to the face. So I have bead here. This is a 20mm bead, and this is the simplest face that I have. in this pattern series, so it's a great one to start with. So you're just going to draw a light center line down the middle of that bead, and you're going to do it on the side of the bead that has the lines running up and down. Okay, and now you're going to flip it this way, so you've got your whole top, whole bottom there, and you're going to create like a center line. It's going to run from kind of the center of that hole down to the center of this hole, and that gives you a grid to follow to make sure that you've got your eyes spaced correctly. And now his eyes are facing down like that, so you're going to make a similar, just a little, I'm going to check that my distance is the same here and do the same kind of shape there. So once you have that, you're going to take your gel pen, and I like to find a random piece of paper just to make sure that it's coming through, and I'm going to go over those lines. I'm going to use the bottom of the bead to kind of support my hand, and I'm just going to trace it. Okay, and now you just need to let this guy dry, so we're going to put him aside. Don't erase those lines yet because the pen ink is still wet. We're gonna move on to the beard. All right, so I've got my interfacing piece, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut it along the dotted line. So now we're gonna move this around so it's facing this direction. And basically what you're going to be doing is taking strands. So this is the yarn that I use in the craft kits, but I wanna try it. This is more a yarn that you're better able to get just at a craft store. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut about 2-inch long pieces, what I recommend. All right, and then you're gonna unravel these, okay? And then I'm gonna take each of them and I'm gonna pull them apart a little bit more even. So you really get kind of those individual fibers. Now, a nice tip for this is if you happen to have a comb around, I'm gonna grab one. This is handy dandy and makes this part go really fast. So you just kind of can go across like that, and it helps open up those fibers a bit. But you can also just pull them apart with your fingers. Okay, so I've got some done, just enough to get started. And you can either use tacky glue and apply it all along this enclosed area. The solid line is what you're working within. I'm going to use the glue gun because I don't like to wait. So I'm just going to start here. Throw a bit of glue along there. And come up and try to keep beneath that line, but it's not necessary because we're going to come back in afterwards and cut where that line was. So this is all, so that the top of this yarn takes that profile. You'll see. So basically just along, if the glue gun is not your friend and not going to work for this for you, just take some white glue, and then you'll just have to make sure that you wait for it to dry before you finish it off. So now you can still see that line. If you can't, you can see it from the back side. Okay, and you're gonna cut along it, and that's gonna give you your beard profile. So you can see how that's coming together. If you notice that you've got some yarn that needs to be fixed a little bit better, now's a good time to do that. So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off along those edges. So you can see I'm gonna pull the hair in, so I'm not cutting it off. And I'm gonna cut along that sideline. And same with over here. I went over it just a little bit, so I'm just going to scooch it back a little so I can kind of see that line. Okay, and cut that. And the bottom, you don't really have to worry too much. If you want to, you can trim that up, but I'm just going to leave it. All right, so you can see how that is coming along. So this will end up going something like that right across his head, and then we'll also do a mustache. I want to show you how I tap this with glue as one option. This can be a bit of a messy situation. Kind of like hat these together to separate them and to give them a little bit more structure and strength so that the fibers don't come apart on you. So I'm just kind of tapping it through. Because if you just leave this and you don't do something like that for those fibers, they're just eventually going to all pull off because they're just so thin. And afterwards you can do some cutting and shaping with it. Okay, and another method, who remembers hairspray, is to use hairspray. You can either use it in addition to the glue to really give it some structure, or I think it'll work just instead. Look for unscented. And I find a number 4 hold. Number 5 would also work. Is great. The unscented is amazing. You really don't smell anything. I've got Tresemme here, and this I'm just impressed with. So I'm just going to spray it off because I don't really want it all over my work surface. So I sprayed it, and you can kind of like tap it through as well, but it's going to hold your fibers. And this stuff's just amazing. I never knew that you could get a hairspray that didn't have a smell to it. So I'm just gonna let that dry and then we'll shape it after. So while that is drying, we're gonna come back to the head because now for me it's been long enough. And I'm still gonna be careful because normally I'll let these dry a few hours just to be so cautious because it sucks if you go back and you've tried to erase the lines too soon and then you smear all over the face. So I'm just going to get rid of all that. So meanwhile, I'm going to move ahead. Whoops. In the pattern, we're going to do the turban. So the one piece I actually forgot to cut earlier, but I just did a very rough cut of it, is the 1/2 inch by 9 inch piece that you need for the turban. Pipe cleaner and cut it down to 5 1/8 inch. I'm going to cut it there. And I'm going to start it up here. All right, the start's always going to be the hardest part. And actually, I'm going to take back my glue. And this will go better if I just do it with my fingers. If you don't want to get your fingers on there, you can always use a toothpick or something. And I'm going to lay this down, and I'm just going to go for it. Lay some glue. I'm not going to do the whole thing at once, because it'll probably fold back on itself and make a huge mess. Come back up here and tightly wrap it and slightly overlapping as I go. Yes, it's messy, but I don't know any other way of doing this. I'm gonna go further. Admittedly, this piece I cut is probably it's a bit longer than the 9, which is why I've got so much left over. I just did it quickly. Okay, so we're gonna go right up to the end, and I'm gonna cut it. I have to get glue on my scissors, and just the last little bit of glue on that end, and kind of try to twirl it around, and that's it. Okay, so that's going to be the start of your turban, and you're going to let that dry. Now we can move on to the crown. I'm just totally jumping ahead today. For the crown, whoops, all we're doing is taking a matching color floss. You can see I still have glue on my hands from the last steps, and we're just going to fold it in half and do a whip stitch along here, and then it'll be ready for when the turban dries to work with, and this ends up going right in the center. And I'll cut it down here. Okay, and then open that up a little bit. Okay, so that'll be ready to go when that piece is ready. And meanwhile, if we're still waiting for things to dry, we can already make the jar. So I've got my 12mm bead, and I need to cut. This is a 6-strand piece of the floss, and I need a 36-inch piece, so that's 6. And then you're going to take your hot glue, just because it's more secure, and I'm just gonna glue it in there along that edge. Yeah, you might get it on your hands. Okay, but you just want to secure that end. And now you're basically going to be taking this strand. I've got a needle in the other end. I'm going to go up through this hole and pull it up through, and you're just going to go all the way around this and create this outside of floss. And so I'll like go around the whole thing, and then I'll go back on it again to fill in any spots that maybe aren't filled in as well as they could be. As there's more thread on the inside, you'll actually feel yourself. You're kind of like sewing through it when you're coming up in the middle, and that's okay. To fill that in, if you find it's starting to get tight in the center, take a pair of pliers and pull it through. Okay, that's pretty good. Oh, I've got a gap here. If you find that it's really getting tight in that center and you're just like, I don't know if I can do any more, keep in mind that the back half is not visible. So if you got some areas showing through, just scooch them to the back and no one will know. I think that's the last one I'm going to be able to get through. And then I am going to, since this is going to be hidden, I'm just going to throw a bit of glue right there. Keep that from moving on me. And I'm going to cut off that extra, and that can become your bottom or the top, really, because it will be hidden by the next piece. Top of the bottle is this thin piece. So when you go to pull the sulky off of these thin pieces, do it slowly, and because you don't, if you rip it, it starts to thin out here, and you might end up ripping the actual felt. So I just do it slowly, pull it off. And for this one, you're going to want to start at one end, the big end, and as you roll it, this bottom, you're going to keep it all flush on itself, and you're going to roll it so you create a flat bottom, but the top is going to create this kind of bottle top. I don't know how else to say it. So I'm flat there, but you see how that's created this little top that goes up, which is really cool. So I'm just going to add a little bit of hot glue in here really carefully to secure that. But the real security in this is going to come. We're going to add glue all to that bottom and stick it directly onto this bead. So that should keep anything from shifting and moving on you. So I'm going to add a good amount, not too much that's going to come out. And I'm going to add it to the top. And there's my little bottle urn thing. But anyways, it's something for him to hold. Okay, so that part's done. Now we can go back to the beard. This is super dry. You can see how it's like really got some good structure in it. And now I'm going to try to shape it. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to pretend I'm a hairstylist. And so I'm just going to create a bit of a V, and you might want to go in and cut a few pieces shorter. You can pull them apart a little. I know, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm actually gonna put it on, this head on, and put the beard on, and then we can see how much more we want to take off. Let's come back over to here, and I'm going to make sure that you put the head on the right way, so the eyes are like this. And I'm gonna add a bit of glue in the bottom of this bead, and it's gonna go over top of that neck. Okay? And that I'm gonna try to find the center of it, okay? And then I'm going to center that right underneath kind of his eye area. Oh, he's got a very full beard, so we might trim some of that off in a moment, and you're going to want to glue. So I'm adding in some hot glue along here. Let it come up. And notice how I'm starting down here and I'm having it swoop up, and that is on purpose. And I'm going to do the same on this side. He has an incredibly full beard, so we're just going to go ahead and trim some of that down. I mean, you can leave it if that's what you want, by all means. I'm just going to like kind of come in here and try to get rid of some of that thickness. I might kind of come up and cut in a little bit. I like that better if I pull it in a bit like that. So what I might actually do is add just a little bit of glue to bring that in. So this is like kind of a bit of a finicky part, and you're just gonna have to play with it until you get the look that you're wanting, but that's not bad. I like that. I think that's what was throwing me off, was it was spread out too wide. So now I do want to give him a bit of a mustache. So I'm going to go back. I have a few more little pieces here. I'm just going to take probably 2. I do not think I need more than 2. And oops, just to be fast, I'm going to take my comb and kind of open them up a little. This time, actually, I am just going to use the hairspray so you can see how that works there. And I'm going to grab my hairspray. Again, you can use glue, and I'm going to spray it away from my working area. And I'm just going to twist these ends together like a cool retro-y kind of, well, I feel like mustaches are coming back, but you can feel it getting sticky in your hands, that hairspray. It's kind of neat. So I'm going to let that piece dry, and I'm actually going to go wash my hands because they feel really gross. So, and the mustache, it dries surprisingly fast when you use the hairspray on it. So it's already ready. So I'm just going to do like a bit of a twist in the center and kind of place it just right there in the middle with a bit of hot glue. So I'm going to go now to his turban. So this piece is nicely dried, and what you're going to do is hot glue the 2 ends together to form a figure 8. Just hold that a moment to secure it. And then for the next stage, I'm going to need a bit of floss. And you're going to take this and you're going to flip it and make like a figure 8. And actually, I'm going to do it so that the seam is at the side. You'll see why. Because then it'll end up at the back. That gluey part. Okay, and then you flip it over and you end up with a bit of a turban. And you may have to manipulate it a little bit because it is pipe cleaner. And so now we're going to come back in. You can glue it, but I'm always afraid of like it showing. So I'm actually going to come in and throw a few stitches in between these. Will feel a little bit different because there is a good amount of white glue in there, but you should be able to stitch through it without any trouble. Okay, and then that's probably good enough. I'm going to just take my thread and bring it into the center so that you really don't see my tie off at the front of the turban. You're going to hide it on the inside. Then this will get placed and secured to the top of his head. And once you manipulate it a little bit into place. Okay, so something like that. And I'm going to add a bit of glue just on the inside here towards the bottom. So I'm going to flip it actually, and just, you want it on the inside because you don't want it to really drip down his head or anything. A little ring of glue, and then you're going to want to center that like so. Okay, and then the next step is you're going to want to get your crown secured in there. So this one, you'll just do a bit of glue around the rim. And if you're worried about keeping that shape, we're going to shove a little bit, put a little bit of stuffing in there just to hold its shape. If you're concerned at all about it deforming, that sticks a little bit in there. There you go. Okay. Then the next step is the back of the headdress. So this is going to get stuck back here, centered again, and it's going to run between, whoops, hang on, before I do that, I'm going to cut off any stragglers, find the center, and this will get stuck right to the bottom of the head, directly underneath the turban. Okay, and what I did forget to do is the scarf should have gone on first, but that is okay. My directions are fine. I just missed this, so that's all right. We're just going to put it underneath like so and drape it in the front like this. And get it even. I'm going to just throw a drop of glue underneath there to hold that one in place, and another one for this one. There, and then you can pull his beard back down. Alrighty, and then I guess it's the last step. I'm just making sure I didn't miss anything, but I don't think so. Is we're gonna take his arms and bend them a little because they have that pipe cleaner in them, so they are bendy. And this will go in his little hands. So it's gonna go kind of on either side of his hands, and again, you're gluing that into place. So once you kind of have it positioned, just throw a little drop of glue in there and stick that hand on. And once you're confident that that is stuck on, then you're going to want to do the same to the other side. You can always adjust things to how you want them. So now I'm just doing finishing touches. I'm sticking that beard in. I think his mustache, I just want it to hold down just a little bit more, like that. And this side as well. But all in all, I'm very happy with how this guy came out. So this has given you a great introduction to the pattern series. And if you made it through this figure, you will make it through all of them. So you can see that was the original one, and this is the one that we just made together. All right, so the next one up is going to be the second Wiseman.